Andrew McGahan.
Why do Americans have such a problem with fucking Irish names?
My wife's Irish, I shouldn't have a problem with
it. You gotta just do an impersonation and just be like, Andrew McGahan.
Chance.
That's actually a good one there.
Yeah.
Ready to roll?
Yeah. Ready.
All right, Matt Erickson from MMA Junkie and USA Today, here with Andrew McGahan from just outside Dublin, Ireland, the mother country this week, for all those fans who've come over from Ireland to Boston for UFC Fight Night 59. I want to get your take on our headliner this week, Conor McGregor. Obviously, we know he's big in Dublin. We've seen how big he's about to become here in the United States, if he's not already. But just how big is he over there for you guys? Is he the biggest athlete in Ireland, period?
Well, for the last 2 years in a row, he was the most Googled sports athlete in the country. Our soccer team isn't what it used to be, but for my generation growing up, our heroes were Damien Duff and Robbie Keane and those guys, and they're all now in the twilight of their career. Rugby is a very big sport in Ireland. Brian O'Driscoll, one of the best rugby players in history, retired last year as well, and Conor still beat all of these guys to be the most Googled athlete. There's a lot of people, like, you hear Dana saying that the country shuts down. I don't particularly believe that. Well, no, technically it's true, because when Conor fights in the States, it's 3 o'clock in the morning in Ireland.
Sure.
So yes, the country is shut down technically. But Conor's fights are broadcast in Ireland on a thing that's called terrestrial television. You guys don't have it over here, but pretty much in Ireland, you plug your television in, you're given 6 channels. It's in 98% of all homes in Ireland. UFC Dublin was watched by 635,000 people live on television, and the tape delay figures for the Vegas fight were somewhere along 400,000 figures. That's 2 days after the fight is aired. The real telling figure is going to be this fight, because we're on the time difference on a Sunday night, it's going to be on Tuesday evening in Ireland. So then we're going to get the gauge. People may not know what the UFC or mixed martial art is, but they know who Conor McGregor is.
Sure. And he's helping, I'm assuming, bring that UFC knowledge and that MMA knowledge to a whole new generation of fans over there.
It's weird, because someone asked him a question in the scrum yesterday, and I thought it was a little bit antagonizing. It's like, what's your message for the people that aren't going to stay up because they've got work the next morning? And Conor gave a really reasonable answer. He said something like, you can't change those people. Some people just don't like fighting, but there are people that love it and they'll follow it and they will stay up and they will do it. Now, introducing it as a whole, recently we had a senator yesterday in Ireland called for the UFC to be banned. She just said the UFC. She thought the sport was called UFC. Didn't know anything about it. Got a barrage of abuse on Twitter from Irish fans, and then retracted her statement within an hour of releasing it.
Probably pretty smart of her, given what's going on this week with the #1 sports star, as we're finding out over there.
Pretty much, because she was uninformed, admitted she was uninformed. And you know, there's the rumours of the stadium show in May with Croke Park. If that does come true, like, Ireland is a really backwards nation a lot of the times. There isn't 400,000 Gareth Brooks fans in Ireland, but he managed to sell 400 tickets to Croke Park last year for 5 nights in a row, and it didn't go ahead. People saying he'll never sell out a stadium. Irish people love a train, they love a bandwagon. Conor McGregor is going to be driving that train straight into Croke Park, and there will be 83,000 people behind him.
And that's interesting you brought that up. That was that same week last year at UFC Dublin when that Garth Brooks controversy happened.
Yeah.
Everybody was talking about it. Everybody's also talking about Conor, and even that week before his big UFC Dublin fight, they were talking about him being able to sell out a stadium.
Yeah, it's there and thereabouts. Croke Park is the 3rd biggest stadium in Europe. There's also another stadium in Ireland called the Aviva, and either would be a great venue. I think Croke Park is almost too big, in my opinion. But to have a screen, which is actually one of the biggest screens in Europe, it's the size of a tennis court, and as well whatever the UFC would add up themselves.
Sure.
My main issue is the weather in Ireland is completely unpredictable. And when I'm saying that, I was saying to you guys earlier, this is actually the first time I've seen snow. We had none in Ireland, but now, the second I go away, there's 150-kilometre winds going through the country, and they're claiming it's a mini hurricane.
Well, Conor's been able to call all his shots so far. He's calling it again this week. You saying he can't call the weather and just predict that there's going to be good weather?
I don't know, he's calling himself Mystic Mac. I think the UFC will take the utmost precautions in terms of that. Like, we had a fight up in Belfast recently, a boxing fight. Carl Frampton, I think it was, and they had a temporary structure built around so that wind and rain couldn't get anywhere near the ring. I suppose the Irish fans are so passionate. You saw yourself how many Irish people have travelled over for this. 1,100 or 1,100 of the tickets for the Vegas fight were sold out of Dublin. There's a direct flight from Dublin to Boston. It's only 6 hours. I think there's going to be upwards of 3,000 Irish fans here this weekend.
It's crazy. Have we seen the best of Conor McGregor yet, or are we about to find out now?
That's a little bit, it's weird, because 18 months ago, or no, nearly 24 months ago, so let's say 20 months ago, Dana White didn't know who Conor McGregor was. because he was in Trinity, and he was in Trinity receiving an award, and I was there, and I asked Dana a question about why to sign Conor McGregor, because it was rumoured he was booked to defend his title in a regional show, and then Dana barely really knew about Conor. Now, Conor's one win away from the biggest UFC event of all time. And if he can make that big of an impression and a growth in such a short space of time, we definitely haven't seen the end of Conor McGregor. In terms of his fighting style, I think if you want to see some really clinical Conor McGregor that we haven't got to see yet, you look at his fights outside of the UFC. The finish over Ivan Buchinger that got him signed to the UFC is just the most beautiful slip and hook you'll ever see, and I think he could recreate that against Seaver this weekend. There's always been a couple of shots that Conor has. His uppercuts are very good. His kicks have improved dramatically with his capoeira. I don't know if you saw the sports science thing, that his kick is only 0.2 of a second slower than his jab.
Pretty crazy.
So I think Conor is going out now to make a statement, to highlight Dennis Seaver may or may not be the perfect opponent to do that against. But if I was to predict something Conor would do, he'll probably stand like this and he'll ask Dennis to hit him one of those spinning back kicks that stop so many people, just to prove that it won't affect him.
Well, from about 2 years ago, watching Conor McGregor on MMA Junkie for Cage Warriors, and now 2 years later, here he is, you know, headlining a UFC show as one of the biggest stars of the sport, being compared to Muhammad Ali, you know, by none other than Lorenzo Fertitta.
But he was quick to dismiss that as well.
Was he? Yeah.
He kind of played that down, he didn't want to comment on it. And that's the thing that the UFC can do, and I hope that they don't do. They can almost over-promote someone and it would kill. Like, the American fans, from what I'm seeing, are split on Conor. And he doesn't care because they're talking about him. You love him or you hate him. When you have guys like Dana and Lorenzo saying he's the most marketable guy in the world, he's going to be the next Muhammad Ali, he's our Muhammad Ali, that's something that's going to turn a lot of people off him very quickly. And it's not through Conor's own doing, it's through the way that the UFC are handling him. Put Conor in front of a camera, put him unembedded, give him a microphone, send him to Q&As, let him build his fan base that way. He will become marketable, he will put people away emphatically enough that people will want to see him fight. You don't need to oversell him. You can't oversell him, otherwise that's going to turn people against him.
Gotcha. Well, definitely appreciate the analysis from the other side of the pond. Stay tuned, we have coverage all week on MMA Junkie and USA Today. UFC Fight Night 59 goes down Sunday from TD Garden here in Boston.